The cross was never meant to be a symbol of victory, at least not in the way the world imagines. It was an instrument of torture, a place where the worst criminals were nailed and left to die. And yet somehow, this brutal death of Jesus has become the ultimate symbol of hope, salvation, and love. How can something so dark be the brightest light in human history? Why did Jesus have to die on the cross? Why is his crucifixion not just another tragedy but the turning point of the universe? For 2,000 years, theologians, believers, and skeptics alike have wrestled with this mystery. Was it simply about paying a debt? Or is there something deeper, something that touches not only theology but the very core of your own life? In this video, we will uncover the shocking truth about the cross and the resurrection. You will discover why sin is not just breaking rules, but breaking a relationship, why no sacrifice of bulls or goats could ever erase guilt, and why only Jesus, the bridge between God and humanity, could bear the weight of all our brokenness. We'll explore the great exchange where his life was traded for your freedom, and the victory of the resurrection that shattered the power of death forever. So let me ask you, when you look at the cross, do you see defeat or do you see victory? Share your thoughts in the comments, because what you decide about this changes everything. And if you want to journey deeper into the mysteries of faith, hope, and love, make sure you hit subscribe. The problem: humanity's deepest separation. Sin is not just a broken law, it is a broken heart. From the very beginning, humanity was created for union with God, to walk in his presence, to breathe his life, to know his love as naturally as a child knows the embrace of a father. But something happened that tore this sacred bond apart. Imagine a beautiful garden overflowing with light, joy, and abundance, and then picture the silence after the gates are shut. That is what happened when mankind chose rebellion over trust. We wanted to be our own gods, to define good and evil for ourselves. And in that single act of defiance, the light began to dim, the garden closed, and separation was born. Think of a lamp unplugged from its power source. No matter how perfectly designed, without connection, the light goes out. That is what sin did to us. It unplugged us from the very source of life, and the result is death. The Bible declares, "The wages of sin is death," not as a threat, but as a truth. A branch cut from the tree cannot thrive, it withers. A soul cut off from God cannot flourish, it fades. Every war, every act of betrayal, every addiction, every broken family we see today is not random chaos. It is the echo of that first separation. But here's the dilemma. God is perfectly just and perfectly loving. His justice means he cannot simply ignore the wound of sin. To ignore evil is to be complicit in it, and God is holy. Yet his love means he cannot stand to watch his children destroyed by their own choices. He longs to heal, to restore, to bring us back home. Here lies the tension of eternity. How can justice be satisfied without destroying the beloved? How can love be fulfilled without ignoring justice? Humanity is caught in the middle, unable to heal what it has broken, and every religion, every philosophy, every self-help system is humanity's attempt to build a bridge back. But every effort falls short. No amount of good deeds can erase the stain of rebellion. No act of penance can balance the scales of eternity. We stand at the edge of a chasm too wide, looking into the abyss of our own making. And perhaps you felt that chasm in your own life, the crushing guilt after a mistake you can't undo, the gnawing emptiness that success or pleasure never really fills, the fear of death that creeps in when the room goes quiet at night. These are not random feelings. They are the fingerprints of separation. Humanity is fractured, and the wound is deeper than we dare to admit. This is not just theology, it is our daily reality. So the question rises, is there any way for love and justice to meet without destroying us? Could there ever be a solution that both heals the wound and pays the debt? This is the stage on which the rest of the story unfolds. And unless we grasp the depth of the problem, we cannot grasp the beauty of the solution. The shadow. Lessons from the Old Covenant. Before the cross ever stood on a hill in Jerusalem, God began to whisper the answer through the sacrificial system of the Old Covenant. At first glance, the sacrifices of lambs and bulls seem strange, even brutal to modern eyes. Why the blood? Why the ritual? But these were not meaningless acts. They were divine teachings, shadows pointing to the reality yet to come. Picture an Israelite bringing a spotless lamb from his flock, laying his hands on its head and confessing his sin. As the knife was lifted, the lesson was unmistakable. Sin is not small. Sin costs life. The lamb, innocent and pure, dies in the place of the guilty. This vivid image seared the truth into their hearts. There is no forgiveness without the shedding of blood. It was a painful reminder that justice requires a cost. Yet in the same moment, it was also an act of mercy. God himself had provided a way for his people to remain in covenant relationship with him. He made a way for their sins to be covered, at least temporarily, so that his presence could dwell among them. But even as the smoke of sacrifices rose day after day, year after year, the people knew this was not enough. The blood of animals could never truly take away sin. The rituals had to be repeated endlessly, which meant the debt was never fully paid. Worse still, the sacrifices dealt only with the outside, never the inside. They could cover guilt, but could not cleanse the heart. People left the temple forgiven, but not transformed. The fracture between humanity and God remained. Yet within this system was hidden a promise. Every lamb was a pointer, every priest a shadow, every altar a prophecy. The sacrifices were never the final solution. They were signposts, echoing the truth that one day a greater sacrifice would come. One day there would be a lamb so perfect that his blood would not just cover sin, but cleanse it completely. One day there would be a priest who would not only offer the sacrifice, but be the sacrifice. One day there would be a covenant written not on stone tablets, but on living hearts. This anticipation grew like a storm on the horizon. The prophet spoke of a suffering servant, pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities, by whose wounds we would be healed. The faithful longed for the day when justice would finally be satisfied and love would fully restore. The Old Covenant was never meant to end the story. It was the opening act, the shadow cast by a greater light. And now, with the stage set and the longing deep in every human soul, the question remains: who could possibly be both the sacrifice and the priest? Who could stand in the gap, bridging the chasm between God and man once and for all? The answer was about to step into history, not as an idea, not as a ritual, but as a person. The bridge. Why only Jesus could do it. The chasm between God and humanity was not something we could cross with effort, sacrifice, or religion. It was infinite. And into that hopeless divide stepped Jesus, fully God and fully man. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff so wide you cannot even see the other side. Every attempt to leap across falls into the abyss. But then a bridge is lowered, solid, unbreakable, reaching both sides. That bridge is Christ. As man, he felt hunger, grief, laughter, temptation, and pain. He lived the life we were meant to live, but failed to. He carried the weight of humanity's story on his shoulders. He knew sorrow, he knew rejection, and he knew the sting of betrayal. He was one of us, yet without sin. That perfection mattered because only a perfect life could stand in our place. His humanity meant he could die our death, step into the grave that awaited us all, and face death not as an outsider, but as our true representative. Yet, if he were only man, his sacrifice would have been noble but limited. One man for one man, one life for one life. But Jesus was also God, eternal, infinite, the very author of life, stepping into his own creation. That means his death carried eternal weight. One act, one cross, one moment in history. But its value was infinite. Because he was God, his sacrifice could stretch across all people, all places, all centuries. His divinity gave the cross its power, its permanence, its ability to crush the power of sin and death. Only Jesus could do this, because only Jesus belonged to both sides of the chasm. Anchored in humanity, anchored in divinity, he became the bridge that could never collapse. And here is the wonder. This bridge was not built with stone or steel, but with blood and love. He didn't stand far away, shouting advice from the heavens. He descended into the valley himself, lifting us onto his shoulders. He walked into our darkness, carrying the very light of God. Think about that. The creator of galaxies, the one who commands oceans and stars, chose to breathe dusty air, to weep at gravesides, to bleed on wood, all so he could be the bridge for you. If you've ever wondered if your life matters, look at the cross and see the answer written in crimson. Yes, you matter, beyond comprehension. So the bridge stands, firm and eternal, but it leads us to the most mysterious, heart-shaking event in history, the Great Exchange, where everything shifts forever. The Great Exchange. What happened at the cross? At the cross, the greatest transaction in the universe took place. Jesus took what was ours, sin, shame, guilt, despair, and offered what was his, righteousness, freedom, forgiveness, and life. This is not just theology, it is the heartbeat of salvation. Imagine standing in a courtroom, guilty beyond question, knowing the sentence is death. Then the judge steps down, removes his robe, and takes your place in the dock. He accepts the penalty while declaring you innocent. That is the Great Exchange. There are many ways to see this diamond, each facet catching the light of God's love. First, the cross was a cosmic battle. Christus Victor. Sin, death, and the devil thought they had won when the nails pierced his hands, but in striking him, they sealed their own defeat. By dying as the one person over whom death had no claim, Jesus destroyed death from within. The resurrection was the triumphant shout, "Victory is won." Second, the cross was substitution. Justice demanded a price, and Jesus willingly stepped into our place. This was not divine child abuse, it was divine unity. The Father loved us by sending the Son. The Son loved us by giving his life. The Spirit loves us by applying that sacrifice to our hearts. Third, the cross was a revelation of love. It wasn't just a transaction, it was a declaration. God didn't simply say, "I love you." He demonstrated it in the most costly way possible. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down his life for his friends. And here's the healing truth. The Great Exchange is not abstract. It touches real lives. Think of a man drowning in addiction, chained to despair, who encounters the reality of Christ's sacrifice and finds freedom. Think of a woman weighed down by shame, who realizes her debt has been paid and now walks in newness of life. The cross is not only history, it is happening in human hearts every day. Your anger, your wounds, your failures, they were nailed there with him. In return, you are offered peace, hope, forgiveness, and joy. But this exchange comes with a question. Will you accept it? A gift remains unopened unless you reach out for it. And this leads us naturally to the moment that validates everything, the resurrection. Because if Jesus had stayed in the tomb, the bridge would have collapsed, the exchange incomplete. But 3 days later, the stone rolled away, and the world would never be the same. The resurrection, the ultimate proof. The resurrection is the thunderclap that shook history. Without it, the cross would have been a noble tragedy, a story of love cut short. But with it, the cross becomes victory, hope, and the eternal promise that death itself has been defeated. Picture the tomb, silent, sealed by stone, guarded by soldiers. Darkness thought it had won. But then, dawn. The stone is rolled away, the grave clothes lie folded, and the voice of the risen Christ breaks through eternity. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever. The resurrection is the divine receipt, the proof that the sacrifice was accepted. If he had stayed in the grave, sin would still hold its claim. But because the tomb is empty, you can know your debt is paid in full. This is more than history. It is personal. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is at work in you when you believe. Think about the chains you carry: fear, shame, addiction, regret. The resurrection shouts that none of these chains are unbreakable. If death, the greatest enemy, was broken, then every lesser chain can snap in his name. This truth has transformed lives for centuries. Timid disciples became fearless witnesses, persecuted believers sang hymns in prison, and broken people found healing no grave could contain. And it can transform you. So let me ask you, do you see the resurrection as just a story, or do you see it as your story? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because the way you answer might shape your entire future. The New Covenant, a relationship restored. Through the resurrection, the promise of the New Covenant burst into reality. Long ago, prophets spoke of it, a time when God would not just dwell in temples made of stone, but would write his law on human hearts. No longer would forgiveness depend on endless sacrifices of bulls and goats. The once-for-all sacrifice of Jesus had been offered. No longer would the presence of God be confined to a holy building. Now, through the Spirit, his presence lives inside every believer. The New Covenant means restoration, not just legally declared, but relationally embraced. You are not just pardoned, you are adopted as sons and daughters of the King. Think about it like this. The Old Covenant was like a shadow on the wall, pointing to something real, but never solid. The New Covenant is stepping into the light itself. Under the old system, people stood at a distance, trembling before the holy fire. Under the new, we are invited to come boldly to the throne of grace, clothed in the righteousness of Christ. This is not religion, it is relationship. Not fear-driven obligation, but love-driven transformation. In this covenant, the Spirit empowers us to forgive where we once held grudges, to show mercy where we once sought revenge, to love where we once despised. This is the revolution of grace, not written on tablets of stone, but engraved into the very soul. Practical impact: living under the shadow of the cross. The cross and the resurrection are not only events to remember, they are realities to live. What does it mean to carry the shadow of the cross into your everyday life? It means forgiveness is no longer optional, it is your new nature. It means love is no longer weak, it is your greatest weapon. It means hope is no longer fragile, it is anchored in eternity. When you look at the cross, you see your guilt gone. When you look at the empty tomb, you see your future secured. And together, they change the way you walk through every moment of your day. Consider the story of a father who forgave the man that murdered his son. Impossible, yes, without the cross. But because that father had been forgiven much, he could extend the same forgiveness. Or think of a young woman who carried crushing shame, convinced she was worthless. until she realized Jesus had taken her shame upon himself. Now she walks free, radiant, transformed. These are not distant stories. They are living proof that the great exchange continues to echo in lives today. Living under the shadow of the cross means courage when fear whispers, strength when weakness overwhelms, and light when darkness presses in. It means you can face trials not as a victim, but as a victor, because the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in you, and that reality turns ordinary days into sacred ground. So here's the question to wrestle with. If the cross and resurrection are this powerful, this transformative, this healing, how will you let them shape your life today? Will you cling to guilt, or will you walk in forgiveness? Will you live in fear, or will you rise in hope? Your answer will not only define your present, it will echo into eternity. The cross was not the end, it was the beginning of everything. What looked like defeat became the greatest victory the world has ever seen. The death of Jesus was not an accident, not a tragedy out of control, but the very plan of God unfolding with precision, power, and passion. And the resurrection was the final proof that every word, every promise, every drop of blood had eternal meaning. This is the heartbeat of the gospel, that love was stronger than death, that mercy triumphed over judgment, that hope broke through the darkest night. Think of it. Humanity had written its own sentence, carving separation from the very source of life. But at the cross, Jesus rewrote the ending. He stepped into the courtroom of eternity, took the verdict upon himself, and tore the pages of condemnation apart. In their place, he inscribed a new story, not in ink, but in his own blood. Forgiven, redeemed, restored. This is the great exchange, our shame for his righteousness, our death for his life, our brokenness for his healing, and the resurrection seals it forever. The tomb is empty, and because of that, no night in your life is truly final, no grave truly permanent, no wound beyond healing. This isn't just theology, it's your life. Maybe you've carried guilt so heavy you thought you'd never breathe freely again. Maybe the mistakes of your past scream louder than the dreams of your future. Maybe you've buried hope so deep you forgot what it feels like to believe. The cross speaks directly into that pain. The resurrection breaks directly into that despair. Jesus doesn't just promise life after death. He promises life before death. Right here, right now. Freedom from the chains you thought were unbreakable. Strength for battles you thought were unwinnable. Light in the shadows you thought were unescapable. Look around at the world. People are desperate for answers, searching in success, in relationships, in wealth, in pleasure, yet still feeling empty. The cross reveals why. Because the deepest wound is not outside of us, but inside of us. And the only cure is not found in more striving, but in surrender to the one who already carried it all. This is why Jesus had to die. Not to calm an angry God, but to reveal a love so unshakable it was willing to absorb the full weight of sin, darkness, and death just to bring you home. And this is why the resurrection matters, because love proved itself stronger than hate, life stronger than death, light stronger than darkness. The invitation is not complicated, but it is costly. It means laying down your pride, your self-sufficiency, and admitting that you cannot build the bridge yourself. It means stepping onto the bridge Jesus already built with his own body and blood. But on that bridge, you find what you've been longing for all along: peace with God, purpose for your life, and hope that nothing in this world can take away. That is the new covenant, a relationship not bound by rituals, but written on the heart, sustained by the Spirit, and secured forever by the sacrifice of Christ. This is where it gets personal, because this story isn't just about history. It's about you. What will you do with a love like this? What will you do with a God who would rather die than live without you? Will you let the cross remain a symbol you pass by, or will you let it become the very center of your life? The difference isn't small, it's eternal, and the choice is yours. So here is my question for you, and I want you to really think about it. When you look at the cross, do you see defeat, or do you see victory? Do you see just death, or do you see the doorway to life? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective on this is not just an opinion, it shapes your destiny. And if this message has spoken to your heart, if it has helped you see even a glimpse of hope in your own darkness, I invite you to walk with us. Subscribe and stay connected, because we're going to keep exploring the mysteries of faith, the power of the Bible, and the beauty of God's love. And if you feel this video gave you strength, if it touched your soul in a moment where you needed light, I simply ask you to consider supporting this journey, not with obligation, but with love. Every act of encouragement, every gesture of support, no matter how small, fuels the mission to keep sharing these messages of truth and hope. If you've ever thought, this content gave me peace I couldn't find anywhere else, then know this. Even the smallest contribution of energy, prayer, or encouragement carries infinite value. It's what allows these words to continue flowing, touching hearts and reaching souls who may be one step away from giving up. The cross was the darkest hour of history, yet it became the brightest dawn. And that light is still shining, still healing, still calling your name. Thank you for walking through this story with me. Thank you for opening your heart to the love that changes everything. If this video blessed you, share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment that might spark someone else's faith, and let's build a community where love, hope, and faith rise stronger than fear. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. And remember this, the same power that raised Jesus from the dead is alive in you. Live like it, walk in it, and never forget you are loved beyond measure.